Welcome back, everyone, to the Talent Talks podcast. I'm your host, Pavlodar Drake Verge, aka Paul Verge. This is the podcast where we talk about the mental, spiritual, and emotional journey of entrepreneurship. Today, we have a very, very special guest. And let's just say he's in a business that there was some talk about it a few years ago from what I remember, but I think it is definitely the future, and we're going to be tasting some very interesting products today. So, Pat, how you doing?
Really great, Paul. Happy to be here and look forward to diving in.
This is amazing, man. So how do we meet?
We actually met at this event called Fuck Up Nights.
How long ago was this?
1 day ago.
Literally 1 day ago.
Yeah, so we were there kind of bonding with entrepreneurs around their mess-ups and the things they fucked up on their way to success or lack thereof. And here I am on the pod, and I'm excited to dive in about all things entrepreneurship.
I remember exactly what happened. So like my entrepreneurship mind, I'm always on. So the first thing what happened was we were sitting about to hear the first speaker talk, and then they had this game where they were like, okay, stand up if you've done this, right? Stand up if you've done this. And we talked a little bit earlier before that because you were with my buddy Will from before. Yeah. So I see that one of the things was, hey, all the entrepreneurs stand up. And, my ears perk up because that's my target market. So I get up and I'm looking around and I see Pat standing and I see like two other people standing. There's a couple people standing, but I notice him like, okay, mental note, let me go talk to him. So afterwards I go talk to him and he tells me about his business, which is like super, super unique in my opinion. So would love to hear more about like specifically what it is, how you got into it. And let's go from there.
Yeah, so I'm the co-owner of a company called Earthproof Protein, and as Paul kind of alluded to, we make cricket-based food products, starting with protein powder and protein bars and everything. And I actually got involved with the business because I purchased the business. So long story short, I knew the person that started the business years ago professionally, and COVID hit, and I was back in my native place of Nova Scotia, walking down the street, and I actually bumped into her, and she was actually getting ready to sell the business. They're designers by trade, and we're kind of struggling a bit with the e-commerce aspect of the business and everything, and I made a call to my co-owner, Scott Birdie, who's located in Ottawa. He's a digital marketing expert, and I'm an e-commerce kind of background person. And we got on a call, discussed kind of specifics of the market. And with Cricket Protein, you were correct to say it had that bit of a uptick back in 2016. And then after that, it kind of tapered off because people were obsessed with plant-based and everything. So long story short, Scott and I got on a call. We reviewed the financials, kind of came to terms with them, and got a couple exciting investors involved in the States and purchased the company. And that was about 2.5 years ago.
So very interesting you say so. There was a bit of hype about it back in 2016. I don't know what happened or what it was hyped up about, but then you said plant-based kind of took over. So what do you think led up to that? Or what do you think like one of the main challenges with this business is, besides like the obvious like Western, it's not the norm to eat bugs. I think it is in certain cultures, but like here it's not. So knowing that, how did you decide, okay, this is still a venture for me, and what was your strategy or thinking going into it?
Yeah, my biggest thing going into it, I was a consumer of plant-based protein. I consumed Vega and a bunch of other proteins, and I always found the taste was a little off. And the one thing to know about plant protein is that it's what's called incomplete protein, meaning that it doesn't have all your 9 essential amino acids. But when it comes to animal proteins like crickets and whey protein and dairy and animal-based things, they contain all the amino acids because they're a complete protein. And I had been doing a lot of research. I'm a big fitness guy myself, and I kind of wanted a protein that offered me more than just plant-based with a bunch of artificial things added for vitamins and things after the fact. So when I heard about crickets and this company and everything, I thought to myself, it's a great way to give people natural nutrition that is an animal protein. So we don't necessarily care about converting plant-based users over to our product.
Yep.
We care about converting people that consume whey protein or animal proteins, but want a more sustainable way to do that. And the reason it's more sustainable is crickets, in comparison to dairy and beef and things like this, they use less water, they emit less emissions, and they're just cleaner for the environment overall when it comes to production.
And so I'm trying to figure out, like, how is the farming of these crickets done? And also, like, so is it a meat or is it not? Like, what is an insect? Like, is it considered a meat, or is it like some sort of in between?
It's not considered a meat. It's basically just considered an insect, but it possesses a lot of the same qualities that you would get from meat. And I don't consider myself a nutritional expert by any way, shape, or form, but when you get meat, right, you're getting high iron, a good amount of that in there, and a lot of B12 vitamins and things. But crickets have that stuff in a higher abundance than meat per serving. So with crickets and cricket protein like Earthproof, you're getting 100% of your daily B12 in every serving. You're getting a bunch of iron, fiber that's naturally in crickets. through something called chitlin, which is like chitlin just exists in crickets as a prebiotic. And it's a great way to get natural fiber. So, and our big thing too is we have like 6 ingredients in the product. It's just your cricket powder, and then we have organic pea protein, organic brown rice protein, and then we add stevia and natural flavor of either sea salt, cocoa, or vanilla bean.
So there they are over there, right? Are those the 2 flavors you have, or how many flavors do you have so far?
So these are the 2 we have now. This one here, chocolate and sea salt, is our best seller. It just has a nice natural cocoa sea salt taste to it. So you mix it with almond milk in your favorite smoothie recipe or whatever, tickles your fancy, and it tastes really good. And then the vanilla one is more vanilla bean. It's more of a natural, gritty tasting kind of version of the protein.
So I've noticed that you don't actually have a cricket on the package, or like a cricket mascot, or like Jiminy Cricket. That could be a funny little marketing stunt for you. You know what I mean?
It could be, but kind of back to your first point about what's one of the struggles of the business is getting people convinced on crickets, because most people's reaction to crickets is, whoa, ick, right? I don't want to eat that. And so we've kind of decided to kind of not go away from the marketing of crickets as the forward thing, but crickets are a value add of the product, and we want to make sure it's more of a superfood focus, because crickets actually fall into this kind of superfood category that's starting to emerge, especially with, I don't know, if you're a plant-based consumer at all, you see how many plant-based alternatives there are, and there's been a lot of stuff coming about companies filling their plant-based products with extra fillers and flavors and things, and it's starting to get not as natural as people thought it was going to be at first. So having an alternative like a cricket, which is a very natural thing to grow and then put into powder, we don't mask it with any artificial things. We're not putting flavor in there. That's artificial flavor that you'd find in like processed goods and things. So it takes us a bit more of legwork in terms of convincing people that crickets are worth the investment and are worth the value nutritionally to them.
So I know yesterday I was playing a bit of a devil's advocate, and I was saying, hey, like your biggest challenge is the crickets, is that like convincing people to eat crickets. So now today I actually have a bit of a different approach, and I'll let you know what you think about it. So for example, I don't know, have you ever read the book, The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing?
I have, yeah.
And so, in one of them, it's like, you have to own your position in the market. You have to own something. So there's that example of like, it was a car dealership, and one of them was number 2, and they're like, hey, we're number 2, so we try harder, right? So I wonder if that's a possible play for you to, like, you almost like double down on the crickets, like showing their lifespan, showing what they're about, making like almost like Liquid Deathify it. Liquid Death, that brand.
Yeah.
Like make it super funny, make cricket-based cartoons. You know what I mean? That could be like a very cool marketing approach for you, because it's like, you could really, I think what you could really capitalize is a bit of like that counterculture, a bit of that counterculture, kind of like how Liquid Death began in the underground with the band, I think they were like playing like death metal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you thought about that approach?
We have, yeah, and it kind of goes back to kind of the struggles of a startup or an early business, and having like, I'm not a designer by trade or a visual graphics person, so we actually have a videographer and kind of design person based out of Brazil that works with us, and he does all these cool little animations for us and things, but we're just on that cusp this year starting to get a little more creative with the marketing. A lot of our marketing to date has been focused on getting like nutritionists and dietitians to kind of speak about the product and their view on crickets as a source of protein and superfood. So we will be leaning into the kind of crickets, but we're trying to do it in a very targeted way.
Yeah. See, this is so let's just play a little bit of, I'm gonna back to be playing devil's advocate here. So what I find was in sales, like people are really buying more of, you got to sell the vacation and not so much like the plane fight, right? So what I was thinking before was like, a lot of people, like even for example, when I sell my product, for example, my talent trellis thing, when I talk to business owners about getting potential employees, I don't specifically talk about like, hey, you're going to get this person, he's really well qualified, and this is why he's going to do the job well. I say, hey, your family's going to be much more happier. Your family's going to be able to see that, hey, dad or mom is, even though they're an entrepreneur, they make time for me, and wow, mom, wow, dad, I know you're busy, but thank you so much for making it out. And it's like you're selling the positive emotions, like the result at the end of it, right? Instead of like the features of it. So I was wondering, is there any way you could apply that to like, say, the cricket-based protein?
Yeah, I mean, we 100% could. And then the biggest thing I've learned about like my first big foray into the nutritional business, and when it comes to nutritional business, you're accountable for what's on the label, especially nutritional facts. Yeah. So we do have to focus a bit on the features of the product, because if customers or consumers don't believe or understand that all your nutritional quality is like spot on and really accurate, and like we went through a whole stringent process of testing the product, getting nutritional labels verified, things like that, we now know that we're confident in the nutritional value of the product, and then we can now focus on those things that are beyond the features of the product, and to the things like you said, appeal to a higher sense of, like for your business, having someone freed up to make it to their children's soccer practice. And for our end of the spectrum is maybe have somebody a little more nutritionally savvy so they can be better in their life for work, for their kids.
Exactly.
Something like that.
They show up, they eat more plant-based, so they show up much more energized, much more ready to go. They know that their protein is not affecting the earth. So they have that positive feeling about it. There's a bit of status associated with it as well.
Exactly, yeah. And we strive to get there, and it just takes time, right? Like there's been a lot of things I learned that don't work too.
100%.
And it's one of those things I think in entrepreneurship that in this day and age, it's tough because we live in a world where everyone makes it seem like entrepreneurship is easy because we have courses online and gurus, so to say, and all these kind of things. And I think we got to get back to the fact of like embracing, like the event we went to, embracing the failures, embracing that it is tough, it is hard, you're going to fail, and you just got to try things and see what, as they say, to throw the past at the wall and see what sticks. And that's what I love to do. I love to make mistakes. And at the start of it, I was doing videos of me kind of talking about crickets and nutritional value, and it just didn't resonate with our predominantly kind of female focused brand, and they wanted more of a lifestyle type of thing rather than somebody sitting and talking about it.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. What are your main customers, and who are like your die-hard loyal fans?
I'd say if I had to kind of categorize the die-hard loyal, be people who are not, we don't attract sort of like the fitness influencers that are looking for a pump and looking to get jacked. We associate with people, and our customers are really the ones that want a high quality protein that has a lot of nutritional value naturally in it. And it'd be your people that care about natural products and non-processed goods and things like that. So we get everybody from the ages, usually probably between 25 and 45, a little bit more money, a little bit disposable income, but want to have an innovative, more natural solution to protein consumption. But our product's not just protein. It's 100% of your B12, iron, fiber, probiotics, prebiotics, all that kind of stuff. So it really speaks to more than just protein powder. And in the crowded space of the protein industry too, it's sometimes hard to get your message across because there's so many supplements.
And we mentioned earlier before we cut off that you do actually, like, you send them a survey and then you ask them to kind of hop on a quick call to chat with them. So I'm wondering, what are these psychographics of these people? I know you said they're wide ranging, but are there any common like attributes, any common like activities, or any common thought patterns around them, or how do they think about things?
Yeah, a lot of the people I've interviewed like one-on-one and talked to on the phone, they're very outdoorsy and active people that are very conscious about what they put in their body.
Okay.
And they also are, some of them are conscious about sort of what they're putting in their body, the effect that it has on the earth too.
This is very interesting because now I'm just throwing out ideas for you as well. Now you could also almost market it as like the more conscious choice. You're the more conscious for the people that care what they put in their body, Yeah. Because like you said, because like you said, that appeals to your target customer. Because I think maybe like, did you ask them how they actually found you or how they even heard about you guys?
So we had kind of the blessing of when you buy a business, you get a good chunk of people that were loyal already to the brand. So we had a good 50% of the customers are like loyal already. And the other ones, they found us through more of the organic search for just cricket protein powder or cricket powder.
What is the volume on that? Is there like, what's the volume search on that? Do you know?
It's pretty good. Like there's a lot, like Loblaws actually used to sell cricket powder just plain in store, but I think they discontinued it now. You could maybe get it online, but we appear a lot under the terms of alternative protein and cricket powder are the two biggest. So we find a lot of people when I talk to them, they say I was searching for a protein that was a little different than what I get at Costco or the big tub of whey protein, or I kind of got sick of the taste of Vega and I've been taking that for so long and I'm looking for a more sustainable, complete protein. And one of the things we're leaning into now is complete protein because after talking to nutritionists and things, and we work with a really cool nutritionist out of Quebec, a naturopathic doctor, and she kind of explained to us the value of complete protein in the whole ecosystem of your body and how like plant-based is incomplete, but they do add a lot of things to try to get it to a complete protein.
So explain that for me because I still have no idea what that means. Like, and one other thing, because you were in the fitness space, you probably is it difficult for you to put your mind to put yourself in the shoes of the regular consumer because like you have this like bias of knowing more about protein? So do you like assume that people know more about these kinds of things that they actually do?
Yeah, it's a good point. Like I don't claim to be like a nutritionist. I've taken protein my whole life back in younger days, just taking straight whey protein and tried those supplement products. And I kind of one day just realized that I actually take a supplement called AG1, Athletic Greens.
Oh, I've heard of that.
And they just are the perfect opportunity for you to get in a single scoop, basically all your vitamins, minerals, adaptogens, and all these kind of things. And when I started taking that, it kind of correlated when I got Earthproof and bought the company. And I thought to myself that people really resonate with these products that are efficient and give them more than just protein. And like AG1 is not protein, it's vitamins. But before that, I was going out to the store and I was buying vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin C, all these kind of things separately. And a vitamin C or vitamin D, you're talking $25 a bottle.
Yeah.
So it starts to add up. So that's kind of where I got into the wanting to deliver an efficient product that's more natural. And when it comes to like the nutrition aspect of it too, like it's something I'm still learning. I was fortunate enough to work with some really talented dietitians, nutritionists, and professionals on the production end of it that could really verify things and learn more about the nutritional value of the product. And now I've come to the point where I do understand the whole complete versus incomplete protein. And I can't speak to it like crazy, like a nutritionist would, but it's really rooted in amino acids. So incomplete proteins don't contain all the 9 essential amino acids that your body needs to function.
Okay.
Whereas complete proteins, like animal proteins, they do contain all those amino acids, all 9 of them in varying forms.
You know what? Now I'm interested. I'm gonna try one. Can you pass the vanilla one? I'm gonna try the vanilla one first. Yeah.
You can try chocolate too. Chocolate it's pretty good taste. Yeah.
I'm gonna try these out because I like the idea like of a complete protein. I think because I do understand amino acids and I understand the importance of them. So I'm gonna try this out. I'm gonna see how this is. So
yeah, give it a whirl.
This is me. This is Paul on the first time trying a cricket protein powder. This is very cool. I'm very excited about this. It smells like just normal protein.
Natural, yeah.
It looks there. It just says cricket Earthproof. Oh, I like the fist over there. Cool. Yeah. Let's take it out.
Yeah, give it a whirl. Odd way to consume protein, but it's got a natural flavor, right? Which is a hit or miss for different types of people.
I honestly cannot taste like if you just gave me this as like this tastes exactly like my protein. There's like no difference whatsoever.
And we do use a blend. So like when I say a blend, it's cricket powder is the main source, and then we add a bit of organic pea protein and organic brown rice protein just to lift the protein content too. And as we grow in the future, we're gonna add a product that's just cricket powder. And when you just do the cricket powder, you can, if you use a bit more of it, get a higher protein content. But we just like the blend because it offers very natural proteins and everything that are pretty good.
Let's try this one. Yeah, I do usually like. I actually don't really. I do eat protein. Like usually when I'm bulking, I need more protein than I do when I'm not. But honestly, this is pretty good stuff.
Yeah, and we hope to kind of capitalize too on the people that are just don't want to just bulk. They want to more naturally have a more overall greater health, basically.
I like it, man.
This is good. Well, mix it up in a smoothie or something.
I definitely will because I do mix smoothies. Yeah, this is, and you're right. There was 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's like seven flavors or 7.
Yeah, like with each of these too, like you're gonna get with the chocolate one, you're getting 20 grams of protein. You're getting over 100% of your B12, so that's for energy. You're getting a high iron content. I think the chocolate one has 14% of your daily iron.
Wow.
So that's going to be a lot for, not a doctor or nutritionist here, but like energy production and things. Like when I was actually young, I had what they called like low hemoglobin, which means like my ability, I think, to like absorb iron for energy was bad. So I had to actually like take iron supplements when I was a kid. So like I've been taking iron supplements my whole life, and now I get it more from my diet. But just that was one of the things about this product for me because I use it every day now. It's just really the iron content and the B12 for energy mixed with the fiber and all these other things, and also no sugar. So it's no sugar, gluten-free, dairy-free, keto, non-GMO, all that kind of great stuff.
And so you mentioned earlier that a lot of the customers already came with the business. So did you ever find out, like, how did they initially hear about it? What initially resonated with the customers? Did you ever have a conversation with the previous owner about that?
Yeah, well, the funny thing about that is the company used to be called Gub Gub.
Okay.
So that was the name of it, was GUB. And I think it was a bit of a play on, like, something to do with crickets, and they had a cricket logo and everything, and they transitioned away from that name to Earthproof because they found that it wasn't the whole cricket offering, just that wasn't resonating with just people.
Yeah.
And the Earthproof name is really founded in the fact of like using a protein in a product that's like proofing the earth from the issues we're causing it through emissions and things. But when they had the business, the two really talented women that had it, Liz Gosling's her name and Sarah Riley's the other one, they're designers by trade, so they're very visual people. And they are actually from Nova Scotia, where I'm from. And that's where the business predominantly operated, was the East Coast of Canada. And they did a great job of going to events and, partnering with running clubs and things. And that's what we're starting to get into. We were active here at the Toronto Waterfront Marathon, handing out samples. So all year long, we're going to start to get into more fitness events, more community events, and just spread the word, really.
Yeah, I guess that's the best you could. I guess your biggest challenge would just be like overcoming the fact that it's crickets. Like that's basically it. But honestly, like I taste that like when you told me that you're doing crickets, I'm thinking like it's a bag of chips, but like there's like little dried crickets inside. Is that something you guys do too or no?
No chips yet. There is cricket puffs. They're called. A company out of the States makes them, but I've never tried them myself. But for us, we're going to be focusing here in the new year. We're making protein bars as well. That was a product line, but we decided to reactivate the powder first. And the protein bars should come online in the next couple months here. And they're like just as nutritious, efficient, on the go kind of thing. And they just taste like an everyday protein bar, but they're sort of powered by crickets.
I love it. Honestly, man, like I can't wait to try them when I get back.
Yeah.
When I'm done here. I want to talk a little bit more about kind of your early influences and kind of what got you thinking about starting a business. So when you were younger, do you remember like was there any powerful role models or people that influenced you to kind of go down this sort of path?
Truthfully, not really. Like I actually it sounds weird to say, but I sort of ended up in startups and around entrepreneurship by default.
No, people, that's like not something you hear very often.
No, and my father works in the financial industry, and I did an undergraduate degree in finance, and I was just going to follow his path into like investment stuff and all these kind of things. And after university, it wasn't something for me. I did a bit of like working in the golf industry and playing and stuff like that, and then I got into e-commerce. So one of my first jobs was at an influencer marketing company in Nova Scotia.
Oh, cool.
Where essentially we owned brands, and we would then just like partner with influencers, get them to post about the product, and drive traffic back to our Shopify store. Very simple. And then I actually went back to school and did a master's degree in e-commerce, which is just a unique way of saying like a bit of computer science with an MBA kind of together.
I didn't know there was an e-commerce degree now.
Yeah, like when I tell the people, they think I'm full of shit. Like even on resumes for jobs and stuff, people are like, "Is that real?"
Yeah.
And they since have changed the program name to like digital something, but it's basically gives you the understanding of like the theoretical and non-technical of computer science and coding and building sites, but then meshing it with the analytical aspect of like digital business and e-commerce.
And you think that helped? Like that course helped?
I think it did, because it helped me land some really interesting jobs. So when I finished my master's, I worked at a startup in Toronto called Commerce Bear for 3 years. And that got me around. I was like the fifth employee or fourth employee there. And they've growing, great company. They're still growing today. But that kind of gave me my first foray into really the taste of entrepreneurship and watching, the founder's a very talented person who just took an idea, came up with it, and grew it to a big company. So being around that was really inspirational. I kind of got the bug there. I was like, oh, I think I have the talent and understanding where I could do something of my own someday. But the problem is like 90% of us want to do that. We just don't know what it is.
Exactly.
And for me, like the Earthproof thing just fell in my lap, really. I was actually walking down the street in Halifax during COVID, and I bumped into the founder, who I knew professionally, but I hadn't spoken to her in a while. Bumped into her shoulder to shoulder, and next thing I knew, I had a company about 3 months later, I think.
Wow, so she was looking to sell?
Yeah, at the time, she was selling the company, potentially trying to sell it to a company, I think, in the middle of Canada, like Quebec or Ontario. And since COVID hit, the company kind of pulled out and was like, oh, we'll reconsider this later. And they just wanted to kind of, I think, get out of the business because the digital e-commerce aspect was growing, and that's not really their strong suit.
Oh, and they weren't doing that at all?
They were doing it, but it's just not well, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot more things with acquisition, retention, and loyalty of customers, and just customer service. Like me personally, I answer customer service stuff most days just on my phone. But long story short, with like my influence, I then worked at a small agency and then at another startup in Toronto. So I've always been at startups, and I kind of got that itch. And I think that like I don't really believe that you need to be like a youth that like gets crafted into somebody that's exposed to entrepreneurship. I think it can just find people at different times in their lives. And I think if you're willing to capitalize on it and willing to get into what's really scary about it, which is failure and imposter syndrome and all that great stuff, like once you get past that stuff, it's really freeing. And whether it's successful or a failure, like it's always a lesson.
So from your early time at working with these earlier startups or from this degree, is there any particular person that like really resonated with you, really influenced you? Did you learn? Are there any person that really taught you some like really valuable lessons regarding entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think it was mostly just like everybody that I was around at these startups, especially people that have done it before. Even my co-owner in Earthproof, Scott, who lives in Ottawa there, he kind of like, when I first met him, he was a head of growth at a company called TrueFan in Toronto. And he kind of turned me on to a bit of that startup culture where I went to TechTO events and some of the other events like we went to the other night. And I think he was a pretty good influence on me in the sense that he kind of exposed me to that side of entrepreneurship and those people. But realistically, I learned a lot from that first startup from the founder there. He was really the type of person that was biased toward action.
Yep.
And I realized really quickly that you just kind of got to be willing to act. It's scary sometimes, but if you have a bias towards acting and not always thinking sometimes, there's time for thinking, there's time for acting, and 90% of getting a business at least a little bit off the ground is just taking action, figuring 100%. Out what works, and then coming back around and be like, oh, we screwed that up, or this worked and this didn't work.
And when you bought the cricket business, when you bought Earthproof, I'm wondering, what are some of the lessons you've learned? Are there any like hard lessons or hard failures you've had along the way and repivoting, and what kind of kept you grounded throughout? Because I assume it's not the easiest business either.
No. It's really just the lesson I learned early was speed. And like when you finally get to be put in a position where the buck stops with you and you're the owner of a business and you handle everything, especially when you don't have a lot of employees, right? You handle everything from incorporating a company to corporate taxes all the way down to just like the tiniest customer service question. And I think my biggest lesson for the first 6 months is that you can go as slow or as fast as you want, but nothing's going to get done unless you really just push it forward. And you can also get caught in this phase of just overthinking everything.
Yeah.
So we had a big period of production where we were, what flavors do we want in there? Okay, what's the nutritional value, and overthinking. And I kind of just woke up one day. I was like, you know what? It's good. Nutritional value is good. Taste is good. Let's go. Yeah. And I bought the packaging. I actually drove to Quebec with my girlfriend's car and put all the packages in the trunk when we first got our first production order. And I actually broke a spring in the back of her like brand new SUV because I had like 500 pounds of the product in the trunk.
Oh my God.
And so she forgave me for that. But it's just kind of like a bias to speed and just be willing to do things that like you might not believe are useful right now, but just go with your gut. And that was my biggest lesson. I wasn't going with my gut right away. I was overthinking everything.
So I like to dive into that a little bit. Like, what does it mean to you to go with your gut? Or how do you know like your gut is saying this? Is it a feeling? Is it like a particular, or how do you listen to your gut personally?
Yeah, for me personally, like the gut's a weird one because you kind of only get to learn and trust your gut more over time by doing things and kind of fucking stuff up is what I believe. And I'm one of those people that I have strong opinions, but I hold them loosely. Mm-hmm. So I'm always willing to hear someone's opinion, like someone like yourself on try this, try that. I'll probably go home and test out some things. Like that's the useful, fun nature of a business. But with me, with trusting my gut, it's just been the times I haven't trusted it, knowing that I could have done something different if I would have trusted it. That gave me the courage and confidence to be like, let's try my gut first. If it doesn't work, man enough to admit it, but at least I tried with my gut and I don't regret it after the fact by not doing it.
100%. And so did you buy the business? Did you already have employees, or how many employees do you currently have?
So right now we just have like 2 that are just very like on contract basis. One's a designer and one's kind of a video person that helps us out. But when we bought the business, they were doing it all themselves. And to this day, me and my co-owner do most of it by ourselves. But some of the video production and design elements for packaging and digital marketing, we work with a contractor out of Brazil, really talented guy, and then another guy locally in Toronto that helps us with filming some content. So it really is just us right now. And then our production team in Quebec is kind of like, Quebec and Ontario is one of those like places you can kind of hire to make products, but they have to take you on and approve your product and everything. So it gives us a really good access to high quality production and a team there that is really dedicated to a good product. And we just make it in Quebec and Ontario.
And how are you going about like managing your employees or leadership, or how do you kind of go about assigning responsibilities and due dates and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a tough one because like being, 2 co-owners of a business, myself and Scott, like he works as a digital marketing consultant and I will work if I'm, getting a role and things like that. But we kind of are very like accountable focused with each other and take responsibility for dividing and conquering it. And my biggest thing is if you say you're going to do something, just do it.
Yep.
That's my biggest thing. So we just have weekly meetings every Wednesday at 9 a.m. where we kind of divide and conquer on the key things for the business. And I handle a lot of the day-to-day operations with orders and some of the social stuff and customer service and product quality. And then Scott will be more on the digital marketing and things like that. So we use a task manager called ClickUp. Pretty simple.
Oh, ClickUp.
It's free. Yeah. But we just hold each other accountable to our tasks. And we created some process internally So I have a process for like ideation for photos and videos and socials and digital marketing, and kind of gets pumped through there. And then we'll assign it to our designer, and he's really skilled out of Brazil. And we'll kind of just get things done by just making sure we're accountable to each other.
Yeah. And what is your current marketing? What is it looking like? Are you using Google Ads, Facebook ads? What's your current like mix?
Yeah, for us, it's a lot of like SEO, like search optimization, and a lot of like organic social, TikTok, and partnering with nutritionists and dietitians. And we attempt to get a lot of UGC. So send people product, get them to try it, and get a lot of reviews. We haven't really foyed into the paid ads yet. I kind of work in the e-commerce space my whole life, and I've just kind of seen the value of those paid ads. If you're a growing business, you got to be careful. You just might overspend on that. And you're competing with a lot of people in the protein space to get eyeballs. So until we get to a point, I think, where our UGC and our organic content is really, really tight, that's when we'll start maybe putting some ad spend behind that kind of stuff.
And what I think one of the most important parts about a business, especially what I've noticed for mine, is to pick the right partner. Mm-hmm. So how did you go about picking your partner, and how did you go to him with the idea to buy this business, and how was that conversation like?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the way me and you met at an event. Like me and Scott actually met at an event in Toronto. I think it was a Tech TO event or one of those ones where we just bumped into each other, and we just kind of started sharing thoughts with each other. And then eventually he was working at a startup, I was working at a startup, so you can kind of vibe over being in the trenches.
Yep.
And we kind of just we got really understanding of each other, like all the things we saw in startups that were good versus bad. And then one night, I think we had a conversation that was like, if we ever had our own company, here's what I would do different. That kind of thing, right? We all have had managers and people that in our lives that they give us a bad experience, but we can use that to then maybe lead a company ourselves one day in a different way. And we just kept a relationship professionally and always talked about ideas and growth strategy. And he was working in like growth marketing, and I was on more of the customer success and product side at startups.
Got it.
So we would just kind of shoot the shit all the time. And then I actually just called him up one day and I said, hey, this person I know professionally is thinking of selling this business. And we had talked about wanting our own business individually. And then I kind of ran into the numbers, and he connected it with a couple of people that he knew in the US to get a bit extra money too. And then we kind of just bought a business together.
I love that.
But we have our relationship is very professional but friendly. Like we're friends, but we're also business partners. And I think we walk that fine line very well. We're very we'll bro down with each other and be friendly and have a good time. But when it comes to business, we're pretty cut and dry with each other. And I think that's important.
I think so, 100%. And have you guys ever had any arguments, or do you guys butt heads a lot? And how would you overcome those?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of arguments, but we don't have zero. He had set up an amazing thing in Klaviyo once, and I went in and I mistakenly deleted it because I was messing around with something. And that was one of those conversations where it's like, hey, I spent so much time on this, you deleted it. And I just totally said, man, that's my bad. I was trying to create a duplicate of it to kind of do a variation of it. Yeah. And I mistakenly just edited his and deleted it. But most of the time we operate under the mentality that nothing's a super big deal. And we want to take each other seriously, but we can't be too serious because then nothing will get done. And so we try not to have a perfectionist mentality. We just, meet every Wednesday, 9 a.m., make sure things are going. And right now, he's heading up the process for our new bars, in Ottawa there. He's going through the process of working with the kitchen to kind of do the first batch of them and get everything good to go. And I just told him, you run with it, you're good to go. And it's kind of it's nice to have someone you can trust to do those things instead of micromanaging each other.
100%. You were saying something earlier about when you were with the other startups, and you were saying that from the other startups, you've learned some lessons. Hey, I would do this differently. I would do this differently when you were talking to your partner. So I'm wondering, what were some of the things that you incorporated that you think really help your business? What are some of the things that you said, okay, I might do better than this from what you saw in the startup space?
Yeah, the one thing apparently that I didn't really understand right away was that when I got into these startups, one thing I consider now more today than I ever did then was that it is someone's business. Someone came up with this idea and they're putting a lot of risk behind it to really make it go. And that was one thing I learned today, now being a business owner, that I have way more empathy for a founder of a startup because it's their idea. The risk is really for them to blow the entire thing up and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't have that perspective when I first joined. I kind of looked at it as more of a job.
Yeah, from the employee perspective, yeah.
Yeah, but when I started to think like an owner, that was the real shift for me. It was if I think of myself as an owner in this business, and with startups, you sometimes get equity in things, but if you just have the mindset of an owner, you'll think like an owner, which means going above and beyond a little bit.
100%. And this is something this was a big reality for me too. I know that there's a lot of talk in some of like the space where it's like, from the employee perspective, like, you need to treat us better. You need to do this for us. You need to do this for us, which I've actually realized in the Canadian culture and in some of this in the US, there's a lot bigger of like, what can you do for me? It's a lot more like, what do you do for me? And I'm not going to lie, I fell into that a little bit as well. But now, and they say, and the big argument is like, hey, without us, you wouldn't have a business, right? Which I get, which is a valid argument, but it's also like, well, like you were saying before, we're the one putting up the capital for the business. We're the one putting our ass in line. We're the one putting risk. If the business goes under, you just lose your job. That's it. If we go under, we lose all the equipment. We lose our thing. We still have to pay back all the employees. So it is a lot more risk involved. And if you take the risk, there should be an ability to like participate in the upside.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of people don't understand because it's so much easier to just blame. You know what I mean?
It is. And I think the other thing that I learned pretty quickly at startups was I came from a master's degree right into a startup. So I was coming from like a polished kind of academic system into an environment of chaos, essentially. Yeah. And I was a bit of a perfectionist right away. And I was like trying to make things perfect, but like, as everybody knows in startups, speed is what helps. Like speed and ship stuff, right? Like get it out the door. And at the first like couple months of the role, and even the first year, like I was trying to make things so perfect to not mess up a little bit. And then I realized really quick, and I do it in my own business today, like if you have something, be speedy, be methodical with it, but be speedy. Because as a small company, you have a short window of time to really garner the market and get them excited about anything, really. Mm-hmm. And I think I always thought to myself in those startups, like I got tons of time, like this business is great, but like if you don't have a speed mentality and an action bias in these environments, like startups can go out of business in like that in 2 months.
Oh, 100%.
And I think that's something I respect now with business owners and founders. And I've had companies where I've had disagreements with founders or managers and things, but just knowing that whole spectrum of like, this could go to shit any moment in a couple of months. It's not like a corporate company where the revenue is just pumping in.
Yep.
If the product doesn't work or something comes in the market, like that risk is high. So I think for me personally, it was just getting out of the perfectionist mentality. And it's actually helped me a lot with my personal life too. It's just, we go through life sometimes trying to be perfect on everything, especially in the day and age of social media and everything looks perfect, that if you kind of have a action mentality and a bias towards action, but don't try to be perfect. Just be whatever you want to be. Yeah, get it done in a way that works for you.
Yeah, and what I've learned personally about entrepreneurship, and let me know if you agree with this. I think it's, first of all, it's like one of the best self-development tools there are, because what I've learned is, I think I've said this before, it's like entrepreneurship is a never-ending reflection of every way in which you're inadequate. You know what I mean? So If like your employees aren't working bad, you're a bad communicator. If this isn't working bad, you're bad at this. If you aren't making sales, you're a bad salesman. Some people do it the other way, and like what you were saying about accountability, which is super, super important, because some people are like, it's his fault. It's his fault. They did it. And I just never understood that, because let's say it is their fault. What benefit do you gain from saying that? There's no benefit whatsoever.
It's the blame game.
It's the blame game, which is just like, and I think very interesting, because I think you picked up on this a little bit too. How good does life get when you start taking responsibility, like for everything?
Yeah, it feels great. It's scary at first, but then you ultimately kind of realize you're in control, right? Like at the end of the day, and you can better work with people, be more empathetic to people, and you're not going through so much friction all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's, they say a lot like go with the flow, or they say like let go and let God, and like surrender your will to God. And a lot of people have an issue with that. What they think is like, well, I'm in control. Well, why would I want to relinquish my control? But I see it as a very different way. When you're going with the flow, or when you're trying to control something, you have a goal and it has to happen this way. And when the mind has it set on this way and it doesn't, you have this like internal friction, like you said, you're battling against it. However, what I think is like, it's kind of like you're battling up a current. You're battling up a river. However, if you surrender to the river and you let it go with the flow, you can then use a paddle to direct where you want to go. So it's almost like I find that it's more important. You have the goal, you know where you're going, but then you surrender and you're flexible in the way that you get there. Because who knows like the crazy energy, who knows what will get you there? Like you claim to know, you claim like you're this omniscient, you're omniscient, you claim to know how you can get there, right? So it's just like letting go and like Like even yesterday, I had no podcast. Like I had two of my guests cancel last minute because one of them. Anyways, I'm not gonna say because they're still gonna be on. But
No one to talk shit.
I'm like, no, I'm not gonna talk. It wasn't shitty. It was just like medical reasons, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then I was like, and then I just met you, and I was like, yo, that's a sick business, cricket business. I've never heard of that. It's so cool. Tastes great, and I think it's quite unique. And I like the way that I like because it takes a lot of balls to just like, hey, let me just buy this business. I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna make it work.
Yeah, and it was kind of scared the shit out of me right away, right? Like I was at the point in my life where we were in the middle of COVID, and I was just like, I was working at an agency at the time, like doing growth consulting for e-commerce companies, and I kind of was like, wouldn't it be fun to do this? And I didn't think too much about it. I just kind of vetted the numbers and the financials, and the fitness stuff has always been, and nutrition has always been something that I've been passionate about, and I just kind of dove in. I think it's kind of a good message for people in the sense that you can consider things and go over the numbers and like do make sure that like it's like when you buy a car, right? Make sure it actually works. Don't just get in it because you like the look of it. But there is a point where like you kind of once you vet the basics, you can kind of take a leap if you want to, right? Like, and I think that's something a lot of people don't realize a lot of times in life. Like people are from different financial means and things, and like, but I think it's just a bias towards action, right? Like if you want to do something, try it. Because 90% of the people I met that were successful thus far in my life, I just kind of asked them like, what's the story? What's the guru mentality? They're like, there's no guru thing. I just did it because I felt like I was something I could make into something. And some of them had failures and successes, but they just had this bias to action rather than overthinking everything all the time.
And as a business owner, there's a lot of stress that comes on you. You're basically paid to handle stress per se. Mm-hmm. How do you cope with stress? How do you handle it? And how do you not let it get the best of you?
Well, I handle it because I didn't do well with it in the past. Like the first startup I worked at, I pretty much burnt fully out. After 3 years there, I just was, I'd be sitting there and my girlfriend, we'd make plans for Friday night at like 7 o'clock for dinner. And I'd be sitting on my computer at 7, just banging away customer success stuff and just didn't care about anything else but what I was doing. And I think it was the kind of the approach to seeing how that made her feel and me only being considerate of what I was doing and thinking I was pushing this business to be successful and I'll be a millionaire and everything will be great and I just can ignore that and she'll be fine with it. And I think the way that I learned to deal with the stress was by like basically looking at her and seeing that I let her down as a partner. And just going through the ringer of overworking and being a perfectionist and not thinking methodically about what I was doing rather than like what I was doing and why I was doing it rather than just output. Mm-hmm. And I think now, being a wise 31-year-old, like whatever that means, I just stop a little bit more. I'm a little more methodical, but then I still have that action bias towards the things that make the sense for me.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. Listen, it's like 3:28 right now. You said you got to go, right?
Yeah, we can do a couple more minutes.
You can do it? Okay, cool. Then we'll just do 5 more minutes, then we'll end off. You can say, okay, cool. Yeah, so that's very interesting. So for you, it was kind of, you didn't cope with you cope with it by burning out, but you don't have like any other coping, like you weren't drinking or you weren't doing or you were heavily working out to kind of deal with it, but it was just like really seeing your girlfriend, seeing the effect it had, that kind of made you switch your perspective on it.
Yeah, I didn't develop any like bad habits or vices and things. I kind of just like when I was in a stressful scenario, I would just totally zone out and I'd go into myself, right? I'd be like, you kind of the woe is me, my problem's so big, I just got to keep working. But I kind of just came to the conclusion, and today what I do is I just practice very mindful work and I take breaks and I work out every single day and prioritize my mental health. And I also talk to people, right? Like even on this podcast, we could talk about probably intimate, important mental things and it wouldn't like be of concern to me because I talk to people in my life every day about that. And I have a really good support group of friends and family that we just shoot the shit. And a couple of my buddies too, like my best friend Kirk Budden lives in Nova Scotia. We're the type of guys that can get on a phone call and we sense something with each other. We're like, what's up, man?
Yeah.
Like you can tell me about that. And I think it's something that like a lot of guys don't have sometimes in male relationships.
Oh no. And I fully agree with you. I think having a support system for entrepreneurs is so important because if you think about it like from a very energetic perspective, like if you're taking on all that stress yourself, you're like a battery. Because stress is like almost energy. You get overloaded.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's important to have like a grounding support network to like kind of to not even vent, but like just talk through your problems and like figure it out. And I think that's so important because I think I know a lot of people personally in my life, and me specifically, when I was like going through some issues myself, like I wouldn't have that. So I would cope with like just stupid little things like smoking too much weed, all these kinds of things. But so that's good that you had, like, so I think people really underestimate the importance of it. Because like in the space right now, there's like a lot of emphasis on these self-made guys, work hard, hustle, you got to hustle hard. But you know what it is? All those guys who say you got to hustle hard, you got to go monk mode, they all trying to sell you something.
Yeah, like a course.
They're all trying to sell you a course or something.
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it too is like, even from the perspective of your business, like helping people get talent, is like, I want to be the best version of a business owner mentally, physically, emotionally. So that if I'm ever fortunate enough to hire employees at a good scale, that I look at it as I work for you. Like I'm building this business, but like I'm fortunate enough to have you come trust working for this company. And I would want to be the best leader possible, so that when I grow my team and bring in amazing talent, that I'm in a good place to lead them, and they're in a good
100%.
place to feel like I'm respecting them. And I've seen founders that are just quote unquote nuts. They're little nuts, little self-absorbed, and people leave. They don't like that, right? They don't want to be led by somebody like that. So I think it's full circle, right? Like, you take care of you so you can take care of others.
And you know what? There was I think it was a poem, or it was some sort of, I forgot what it was, but it was like, the best thing you can do for me is to take care of you, and the best thing I can do for you is to take care of me, and thus together we'll come and we'll form a harmony or something.
It's like the play mentality, right? Like, you're supposed to put the mask on yourself before you help anyone else, because you can't help anybody if you're passed out.
Exactly. And it's like, you can't, if your cup, and you know, another very interesting thing I've realized from my experience is like, Bruce Lee always talks about, you want to be an empty vessel. You want to be empty, like a cup that's empty. The usefulness of a cup is in its emptiness, right? And I was really thinking about, like, why is that? And I realized, my God, because if you have guilt in your body, or if you have shame, or if you have anger, those are things that people can hook into you. You know what I mean? So people can be like, oh, you're like, they can guilt you into it. Oh, you owe this to me. You owe this to me. And if you have a sense of guilt, they hook into that, and it kind of brings you in. But if you understand, you're much more, you're not subconsciously guilty. You're not angry. Then you can be much more free flowing, and you're less likely to be like manipulated by, say, certain narcissists or things like that. So I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think like we don't take enough time as people today, like even in business or just personal life, just understand yourself, right? Like, we're all trying to put this version of ourselves out to be accepted by the world, but we often don't go internal and be like, who am I? What makes me happy? What do I offer? And I think for a lot of people, once they do that, they realize that like that is enough. And like, then you go out in the world with that badge on you of like, I'm enough, and all these kind of things.
And I think everyone is a unique soul. I believe this. And I think there is a door or a goal for everyone. But I think what happens is people tend to get misled by false goals. For me specifically, I used to, when I set goals, I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it just was meaningless. It was meaningless. So now, like, okay, I was like, what do I want to do? Well, I would love to ride horses in the meadows. Love to do that. So I put that on my board. I'd love to go into the Amazon jungle in Peru and just find a nomadic tribe. Like, it sounds ridiculous, but that's what I would love to do. Yeah. And I want to climb mountains and all this. But what I realized was very interesting. Once I started actually like imagining myself doing that, and once I really started going after things I wanted, I had energy. Like, the energy was like given to me, because it's that emotional raw energy that like points you in the right direction. And I realized that because I'm going after this, the money, the health, the body is just a byproduct of getting that. Because no one really wants to be like, maybe some people, like, no one actually wants to be jacked. No one actually wants money. They just want what they think being jacked will give them, which is confidence and strength and vitality, or what money will give them, which is freedom. And so go for the freedom, and the money will just be a byproduct, because money is a terrible goal in and of itself.
It's a vehicle, right? Like, at the end of the day, right? Like, at the end of the day, you don't take it to the grave, right?
Exactly.
The minute you're gone, the money, it goes wherever. But like, I think you need to have something bigger than yourself to go after. And it's tough, because like, everybody needs to make ends meet and pay their bills and things. And like, I'm always an advocate for take care of yourself and all these kind of things. But like, there is a certain realities that like, not everybody can be an entrepreneur, and not everybody's successful. Like, success rate for entrepreneurs like is quite low, right? Because the business fails or they fail as a person. And like, I think the companies I meet the people that lead them that are successful, and I'm like, they're a well-oiled person. Like, they are them. They're one of one. They understand that. They're confident about it, and they exude that in their business. And I've seen the ones that aren't, and they let their own issues. We all have issues, but they let their own issues kind of kill the business a little bit.
100%. And there's something so special about that. Like, when there's this concept that I'm reading in this book called reality transurfing. I don't know if you ever heard this book. I talk about this book all the time, but they have this thing called a pendulum. And what it is like, when two or more people get in a group and start thinking and feeling in the same way, if the group is big enough and for long enough, they say there's a third entity that's created. It's like an energetic information structure, and they call it a pendulum. So it's basically like if you were to put it in words you can understand, it's like groupthink.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So people will naturally give up part of their personalities to be kind of like in sync with this thing, and this thing provides like false goals. Like for example, like like society's expectations are a bit of a pendulum. Like for example, like you want to be rich, famous, you want to be this, you want to be this, but these are like false goals for some people. And for example, do you know someone? Have you ever been in a friend group? And in the friend group, there's always that one dude that's a bit on the outs. And there's always that one dude everyone makes fun of. I was thinking about that because I've been on both ends of that, and I'm like, why is that? And I was like, oh my god, I figured it out. From this perspective, I was thinking and feeling differently than those people were. So almost like on an energetic perspective, on an energetic level, I was not in harmony with the group, because like I was going this many hertz, they were going like in terms of like frequency and thought patterns, right? So I was like, so then what my friends used to do is they come to me, you've changed, you're different, or why aren't you this? Why don't you hang out with us anymore, right? And I was like, it's weird because I know they're saying it, but I know it's not them. I know it's like them trying to hook me back into like, have you heard the story of the crab in the bucket? Yeah. So they're like trying to pull you back down to their same emotional level, and it's just like, it's so weird because I don't blame them because I kind of understand it's not, because you can be one-on-one with a person, you're completely different, but in a group, do you know what I mean? It's like So it's almost like in a weird way, when people are together, like there's a third thing that's like different, Yeah,
and I look at, like, I've had friendships that I don't have anymore because I've changed and those people have changed, and we've, not parted ways, but like my big thing is if I make a change in my life, I don't try to be an asshole about it to people that are important to me. Like I've had friends that I don't speak with much anymore from high school and university, but like just because I've maybe changed a bit and don't do certain things, whenever I see them, it's, how you doing? What's up? And like, I think we can all make changes in our lives, but if you're not, as long as you're not like a dickhead to your friends about it, I've changed, I can't hang out with you guys. Like, that's just a weird thing to say, right? Like,
well, then you'd be surprised. People say it, dude.
They do. And like my best friends to date are the ones that like I've gone through some shit, I've changed as a person, and they're like, hey, but you're still Pat. We still love you, man. Like,
that's so, you know what? That's so funny because I had friends from when I first came to Canada. I had friends like from my elementary school. I had friends with them, and then we kind of parted ways a little bit because I went to this other school, and I started to change and all this, and I really, and like when I because I used to be much more authentic when I used to be like a kid, right?
Yeah.
And then I had to change because I had to become like Paul because I was a Ukrainian little kid coming out here. But then when I started being my authentic self again, the right people find you. The right people who are meant to be always find you.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because it's sometimes what happens is there's always a very lonely phase of entrepreneurship. Did you ever go through this like lonely phase?
Yeah, 100%. Like I worked at a startup up until 7 months ago. I got laid off from the startup, and I was just, my co-owner Scott was like doing a bit of travel in the States, and I was just hammering away at the business on my own, going to events around Toronto, and like it was a pretty lonely phase of it. But like I kept going on the fact that I know that it was important to me and had a good support system, but it can get lonely sometimes, and you can start questioning why you're doing it. Should I do it anymore? But I think you always need to have the why rooted in something really strong.
Oh, 100%.
The cliche to say the foundation, right? Like the foundation needs to be solid.
100%. I remember there was this one time where like, so I started really going on this entrepreneurial journey. I was trying to change a lot. And when I was making this really positive changes in my life, I noticed everything around me started to fall apart. I would lose friendships. Certain objects would lose, like certain objects that I had, I would just lose them randomly and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, and then I was into this like in the desert, this lonely period. And I was like, and I was examining it from like an energetic perspective because I like that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, so when things are in harmony, they're a resonant frequency. They're all at the same time. So what happens is if like an atom splits up or moves away, what happens is everything no longer in resonance, no longer resonating with your new life, tends to fall apart. It tends to fall away. Like certain objects or certain messages. Like, what's so interesting? I don't know if you noticed this, but I noticed this. Like, I know anytime I go through.
Sorry, a little phone call.
I know every time I go through like a big change, I have this like intense urge to get rid of shit. in my room. I don't know if you ever had that. It's like, you know, when you just get rid of clothes, you get rid of all these kinds of things.
Or you rearrange things,
or
right?
you rearrange, yeah.
If my girlfriend, that's probably her calling me. Like, I rearrange our tiny condo all the time, and she fucking hates it. But I tell her, I'm like, I'm rearranging because it makes me feel like I'm refreshing it. And it's kind of nuts, but like, it makes me feel a little better. So,
but I don't even know. I think it's like it happens from internally first, like something happened internally, and then it reflects out in the outward. You know what I mean?
And I think it's a good way to kind of like, I don't know, I always abide by this thing now in my life where I might not get the quote perfect, but it's like, God give me the strength to, you know, basically identify the things I can control and be wise enough to accept the things I can't.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, exactly. You got it right. But I love that because when you embrace that, like, it's that freedom where it's like, hey, there's just certain things I can't control. Yeah. That's okay. But the things I can, just be aware and self-aware enough to then control them when you have the opportunity.
100%. Well, listen, man, I know we can probably go for another hour here if we wanted to, but I know
I'll come back another time.
You can come back another time. So, Pat, it's 5555. It's been an absolute pleasure having you today. I'm going to definitely check this out. Do you want, like, let the viewers know, where can they find you? What's your Instagram handles? Maybe if you want, you can give a little code for them for, you know.
Yeah, you can find us at earthproofprotein.com or at earthproof on Instagram and TikTok. And when you head on the site, you'll see we have some good codes for like 20% off your first 3 purchases. Cool. And we're always sending email marketing stuff out with cool things. And if you want to try a sample, just send me an email at pat@earthproofprotein.com and I'll gladly send you one of these bad boys and you can give it a try.
That's amazing,
it's good.
Man.
It's crickets, but it's good.
I tried it. You saw me. It's good. I like it. Pat, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it, bro.
Pleasure.